Um, Welcome to Shifting from Grudge to Grit, Grace, and Gratitude. I am sitting in Johannesburg in where Jamila is based, and I'm going to be seeing Jamila tomorrow, hopefully.
Yes.
And then Terry is all the way from, you said Maryland in the
Yes,
US,
in the Metro DC area.
in the Metro DC area. So while I'm just going to press live on Instagram, welcome Jamila, welcome Terry, and then I will leave you to say hello and I will read Terry's bio afterwards.
Terrie, would you like to go ahead and say hello to our viewers?
Oh, thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Terrie Christine. I am an internationally known intuitive energy healer, and I do a little psychic medium work, but I specialize in the focusing in the subconscious space, the place where your limiting beliefs are from childhood, and people and places and things will trigger you, but that's a trigger from the subconscious. And I'm the one who brings that forth to help put your pieces of your puzzle together to help you get into the space of ease and grace and attraction and all those other groovy things we love.
That is amazing, and I can't wait to hear all about it. Welcome to everybody, and we are so grateful to have you all on another Friday afternoon. Anissa, I feel your closeness. I'm so excited to see you tomorrow. Yeah, welcome to a very cold Johannesburg.
Yes, indeed cold. So let me just introduce Terry. She's given a little snippet of her bio, but not nearly enough justice. Let me introduce the topic of today. It's being stuck in the heaviness of betrayal, resentment, or emotional exhaustion. Energetic forgiveness is really the theme we're discussing, and clearing and restoring flow in our lives. As she said, she's an intuitive energy healer and transformation expert. Um, Also, internationally recognized, right? We didn't say that part. Did we say that part? For 20 years. So, for two
Yes.
decades. She's been seen and featured on Bravo's hit TV show, The Real Housewives. Now, I don't know if I'm going to do this name justice. Potomac,
Potomac, yes.
the OWN network's Love and Marriage DC. So that's the Oprah Winfrey Network, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Good Morning Washington, Las Vegas, and Chicago, and Fox 5 DC. Through her work as an intuitive energy healer, she has mastered the ability to access her own intuition, which has allowed her to fully envision the struggle, hurt, fears, and anxiety you are currently going through. You're my tribe, Terry. You're my tribe. She works with clients all over the world and continues to be a source of emotional and spiritual healing in the self empowerment community. So, Terry, without further ado, where did this journey start? Because we don't just become, we return home to this part of ourselves. Where did the coming home to this part of yourself really commence in your life?
I appreciate you asking me that question. When a person has such a profound shift in their life, that can catapult them to doing various different things based on what they thought their life was going to look like. When I was at the end of a 14-year relationship, I was pouring so much into them because that's what my mom and grandmom showed me, that in order for you to feel love, you have to give love endlessly. And that's what I did. And when I realized that I was suffering more internally than anyone in the household, I thought, you know what, if this is really what love is about, I'm out. I don't want it. So I found myself at the very end doing everything for him, for our family. We have two beautiful little girls at the time. And I woke up at 3 a.m. I'll never forget it because I looked over at the alarm clock and I crawled out of bed and I laid on the bathroom floor and I said, God, I'm done with all ounces of every part of my soul. I just said, take me, because if this is really truly what love is, I don't want it anymore. What I did is I found myself in the state of lucid dreaming. I felt expanded. I felt lifted as I was coming out of the body. My eyes were closed, but I was fully awake. As I was blinking, it started forming into as I was in the center of space. I could see stars all around me. I could feel this expanded sense of being. I could feel dampness. I could taste it. And then all of a sudden, I heard 3 simple words. Love will come. It was very masculine. It was as if I was in the center of a speaker, and it shook me. And within that state, I just sort of sucked back in my body, and I stood up and I'm like, what just happened? I went back to bed, and the next day, everything changed. Literally everything changed. When you're so far down that you can't even see forward, that it was a sense of God throwing a rope down that hole, and then I just crawled up. And then I felt this sense of hope, because I was down to not wanting anything. But hope can lift you, and that's just one step forward. Then I went to the bookstore. Ladies and everyone listening, I had no time besides taking care of the kids, had a corporate job, taking care of the house, and he just mowed the yard and watched TV. Yes, he did. He created that, and I allowed it. That I went to the bookstore and I started pulling authors that I had never heard of. But now today, they are the masters of what energy work, moving into that spiritualness, was Wayne Dyer, Esther Hicks, Eckhart Tolle, and it was all making sense to me. And the truth always makes sense. And within 3 months, I was able to grab a hold of my senses. I left that relationship, and then that's what catapulted me into the various different things that I do today.
Wow, what an amazing story. I'm getting goosebumps just listening to you. But it's so true. I think that when you are meant to get that calling and that direction, it's divine, right? It's meant to be, and you're meant to be in that space. And as far down as you might feel, you had to be in that space to get that call, so
That's
that you
right.
yes, so that you know which direction you should be going to. And it happens to us at different stages in our lives. Like you were still in your relationship. I remember this happening to me when I was just out of a relationship. And it absolutely devastated me because I felt like I didn't know who I was anymore. I didn't know where to go. I just felt like my life was over. And there was just nothing that was giving me that motivation or hope or anything. And I remember walking into a bookstore, funnily enough, and Anissa, I walked into exclusive books, and in my mind, I was having this conversation with God that where do I go to? I mean, show me a direction, show me what to do next, because I have no idea. And I picked up Esther Hicks' book, and I said, I'm going to open this book up and see the law of attraction, and I'll see whatever message comes back to me. I know that's my direction to go to. And I opened it up and I read the part about the divine being within yourself and finding and acknowledging that power. And that is what gave me the hope. And it almost felt like, someone had switched on, that light, and that direction was given to you. And I so truly believe that is purely divinely given to you, and the message is sent to you when you are ready for it.
Yes, when you are ready. Because I was a very resistant person.
Yeah.
And, again, it's your personality is created about all of the things that are happening around in your environment as you're growing up. And so think about it. You could have 10 houses on a street, and everyone could have a mom and dad, and we think we're all going to be the same. But the reality is, hell no, sorry, but it just doesn't work that way. Because everything that's happening in your 4 walls is what your caregivers are showing about their limiting beliefs and about where they're struggling, and that we're just watching as little baby souls saying, I'll do that, I'll take that, they are right, they're my parents, they're everything to me. And then what ends up happening, here you are as an adult, and you're struggling. You don't know why you keep attracting the same thing, the lack, the not having the clarity you need. And that's where the resistance is. We think, oh, it's just me, and I'm just struggling. And the fact is, if we stop long enough to review what our childhood was showing us and putting upon us, quote unquote, then we'll realize that your soul is saying, I am worthy, I am heard, instead of the opposite of what we thought when we're watching our caregivers around us.
And so you say we're watching our caregivers around us, and for me, there weren't many caring going on within the caregiver space. So in this journey that we speaking about for you, and especially for anyone that else that's listening that's been through betrayal or have some sort of resentment or emotional exhaustion because they never really received or were on the receiving end of any type of reciprocation of care, love, kindness, empathy, and compassion, how do we then lead ourselves to healing when we don't even have the most basic essentials cultivated within us or given to us? Do we innately just possess it? I do feel so. We do. We were born divine and we were born with the gift and natural levels of empathy and kindness and love. But if we don't receive it, how does that cloud the way we show up in the world?
So as Jamila was saying, that the power is within us, but most people don't understand that. When you're seeing a repetitive pattern within yourself, let's say you go from relationship to relationship to relationship, and you're saying, well, that person wasn't right for me because, then you go to the next one and say the same thing, and then you repeat those. Most people will use the blaming, because as children, what do? In order to get past something, we'll blame, drop off all of that on that experience. Maybe that person, your little friend from school, or your mom. We'll drop it, blame, and then we can go off and play. And so as an adults, people are still doing that instead of stopping and saying, okay, my mom left the family unit when I was 5. This is an example. This is not happening to me, but this is an example. My mom left me or left our family unit when I was 5, but I was okay with it. Now they're saying that as an adult. But what they're doing is that they may go from each relationship and say they didn't love me enough. They weren't calling me enough. They weren't doing certain things enough, right? And that's a sense of abandonment where they're sabotaging because they're trying to get what they never really had. But instead, she's saying that person was enough and so on and so forth. But when we stop to see patterns within ourselves or what is within our lifestyle, it will show us, whoa, okay. I mean, I have a lot of clients that have abandonment issues. You know, a family, you know, a caregiver, mom or dad, will have left the family unit. The divorce went through. They may not have processed the divorce. The father never came back to, you know, to visit because he ended up with a new family. And there are so many stories around that. But when we realize that we, the individual soul, is creating the storyline based off of the experience that you had as a child growing up.
Yeah, couldn't agree with you more. I relate to that so much. It's always about going back within and going back to your experience and going to that inner child and what she might have lacked that has come from her childhood, because it translates then into your adulthood in different forms. And, I was just thinking about who I am today and about how you progress in life and what you stand for. But there are times where, those limitations come back, and it shows up in different forms. Like, in as much as you know, like for me, I would like to say that I am focused on women empowerment, and I'm all for supporting and lifting women up. But every so often, when you become challenged or you feel insecure about something, something from that childhood will surface or resurface again.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about taking accountability for it in the way that you might have reacted when you in this adult phase, but going back to see why you behaved in that way and trying to fix that root problem.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Taking ownership for it.
Yes, yes, and calling yourself out for it, not to the extent where you beat yourself down, but where you come from a space of understanding, okay, this is why I behave this way, and this is how I should be behaving going forward, but addressing it as to where it came from as a child that made you feel that insecurity to begin with.
Exactly. We'd like to say that, yes, we can do that and it's easy, but most people don't, because they don't know where to start, right? And they
Yeah.
think, well, I'll just, learn Reiki, or I'll just, when it comes to the spiritual aspects of energy, right? I'll do breath work, and then they do one or two and then they stop, or, they think that I can just keep living life and it'll just sort of work its way out. It never does. It's your subconscious, right? Going deep is tough. Having to face things that could alter and will alter your life. Meaning, if you're struggling now, how much longer do you want to continue to struggle? And so, but people will cling on to that because there may have been chaos in their childhood, and that feels normal to them. Very interesting. I'm going to just drop a little golden nugget. I dated a guy many, many years ago. His family, his mom and dad, always argued aggressively. So here I meet him in his late 40s, and when he talks to me, he projects aggressively. And it was almost like a shatter in my brain. And I finally said, you don't have to raise your voice to me. And then he just went, what? I'm not doing that. And you see that he is the product of what he thinks is normal, when I never had any of that. So it seemed very aggressive. It was like a glass shattering in my brain when he was like, Rah! And so when we really have to be fully present in our environment for ourselves and what's going on, to be able to pick up what is happening within yourself. So for him, I kept repeating, why are you talking like that? Why do you have to be so aggressive? Until finally he said, and this was at the beginning, it probably was within the first month, he said, my mom and dad always spoke like that. And it was so aggressive. So being able to listen instead of pushing back and say, I'm fine, it's you. But if you're hearing it multiple times, even twice, I always tell people, if you are looking for answers and you hear somebody say something once and you go, oh, that was a coincidence, it's going to come to you another time, usually within minutes, days, or hours. It will usually come to you again. Then you go, oh, there it is. But you can take the first time somebody says something, I call it the energetic backpack, stick it right in your energetic backpack, knowing that that will come to you again to show you that This is something that you need to address within you.
I love the idea of an energetic backpack, right? Because I use that as a metaphor when I talk to my kids around what's making our backpacks heavy. And given that our discussion is really moving out of that grudge resentment state into energetic forgiveness and how to release these emotional blockages to restore that inner flow. And lastly, and taking that sacred journey from pain to personal power. How then, when, if you think about the hero's journey narrative arc and how we build on that narrative in that storyline, how do we create this backpack that's lighter energetically?
I love that. Well, when you're placing those little tidbits that the world is showing you there's something within you, and you're sticking it there for it to present itself, meaning it's not something that's going to go away, my friends, as I stated. So I said it twice. Listen up, so somebody needs to hear this. It's an opportunity to say, okay, quiet myself. If you have to retreat in going within, not talking about it, analyzing the thoughts and your actions so that you can move through what you have been building up into that energetic backpack. But I use that phrase for things like the nuggets that are coming to you and you don't really know why or don't have the full answer of why it's coming, but there's something in it. Feel it to believe it. Feel it. Then when you stick it there and then it's presented like twofold, tenfold, then you're like, okay, now it's time I need to address this for me.
Such powerful words. Tell us, Terrie Ann, because I'm very, very interested in this, a little bit about you and being a medium.
I love that. Thank you for asking. So my grandfather passed away when my sister was fully connected to having him assist her as a single mother. She had a 2-year-old. They became so close. He ended up having some kind of issue in his intestines and called my sister and said, I'm going to go to the hospital. I don't know what's going on. I'll call you when I'm done. The call that she got next was he was done, meaning she called me and I answered the phone. I know exactly where I was standing in front of the Omni Hotel. I had my hand on the door and I was pulling it open and my phone started ringing and I noticed it was her. I still had my hand on the door and I answered it and she was screaming, he's dead, he's dead, screaming so loud. I'm like, what? And so when I finally got what was happening, my grandfather was born with a heart murmur, and when the hospital took him, they didn't do some things they should have done. And he ended up having a massive heart attack on the MRI table to find out what was going on. Well, within that space, my sister instantaneously was lost in loss. And for those 5 years, at the anniversary of his death, she kept talking about being with him. And on that 5th anniversary, I knew that if I didn't do something, that I may not have her as well. So I live intuitively. And at that point, I still haven't moved and had that spiritual epiphany to be what I am today. And I kept saying to myself, this is not going to happen on my watch. I have to make something happen. And as I was saying that, I believed it. And I went to this networking event and I met this girl who was talking to things that we couldn't see. And I didn't understand what a medium was. And I'm like, you know what? Give me your card. And then I set up a 3-way call. And I said, this could be an answer. So you see, my curiosity stepped into something that could have been an answer, which ended up being a life-altering answer. This woman only knew my first name. So when we did the 3-way call, she brought my grandfather in. She was a medium. she started telling us all of these things that she never would have known. At the end of that hour call, I knew instantaneously that I wanted to save lives like that. Because after that call, my sister was celebrating his life versus being lost in loss. It saved her life, and I knew it. So I'm like, I want to do that. But I was trying to get out of my relationship and trying to figure out how to make it better. That's what we do. We get caregivers. We keep giving. How can I save this? Until I had my spiritual epiphany. But I put that seed of that mediumship call in my energetic backpack. Do you see what I'm saying? I held on to it thinking, I want to do this, but I can't right now. So once I had my spiritual epiphany, I went on a journey. But I thought the journey was going to be mediumship, because I want to save people's lives like that. But at the time, because way back then, most of what I could find online was in the UK, outside of the US. I'm like, oh, I don't know if I want to send my money outside of there. So I went on a journey, and it was very interesting. I started with meditating, and there were no books about meditating. I had to figure it out on my own. It took me 3 months, but I never gave up. Every morning, 5 a.m., I was getting up, doing an hour meditation, falling asleep, doing it again, falling asleep, doing it again, until I stopped falling asleep. And I was a single mother at that time because I had left him. And so when I realized that I was moving into certain things, I took a course with intuitive development, and I thought that it was a year long. And I thought, okay, I want to be a medium through this. But I learned everything else. It was almost like I went around the world and back. And then by the time I was finished, I'm like, I wanted mediumship, right? So I was wanting it so much. And this is the difference between creation and lack, is that I was strangle holding it. I wanted it so much that 6 months out, I was talking to another gal that was in the course, and she said, Terrie, back off. Stop strangle holding what it is, because when you're strangle holding and focusing on what you don't have, you create more of what you don't have. Mm-hmm. So then I said, okay. So in the morning, I'm like, I would say, I am a medium. I am talking to dead people. I am talking, and I would do that. And what ended up happening, 1 year to the day, I was on the phone with a guy, and I remember I was still working in corporate, and I was in their warehouse room, and I was looking out the window. Certain things, we just remember all the details. I was on the phone, and he was talking about his dad. He didn't have any idea that I had taken this course, and I was like, okay, I want to be a medium. He was talking about his dad, and he was talking about all these wonderful things. And then all of a sudden, I felt as if someone poured tingling down the back of me. My head tingled, and it just flowed down all the way down my back, my spine, my legs to my feet, but my backside. And then in my head, I heard, Frank. And when he finished, and I said, do you know anyone by the name of Fred or Frank? He said, oh, my dad's name was Frank, but we used to call him Fred. What? That was my very first time. Once you open up those gates, then you know that it's never going to go away. But I allowed it to happen because with him, he allowed it to happen by he was calling him in with those kind words and sharing all the memories. And then I was in that space of complete openness because I was so into listening all about the love he was sharing, and that brought it in. And now today I do it a different way and I bring them in. But the focus is the intuitive development, but the mediumship work ended up happening, and people still do hire me for that because I do believe and know that mediums do save lives. They save them in a way where people can let go of the loss that they're lost in.
Wow. Unbelievable. And I guess it would be at a stage where you completely let go of trying to control a situation. When you receive the downloads or the information that can come. I wanted to ask you, because I do believe, from all of the the work and the books that I've read, that we as individuals and as divine beings have this heightened sense of intuition. And this, every one of us are gifted with this. But as we progress through childhood and we've been influenced by, our family members and society, and when we get to school, there's this sense of logic that overtakes everything else, and we tend to forget. Do you believe that each one of us as individuals has this gift, and that it just needs to be something that's developed as you've done?
Yes, that is a great question. And I love when things pop in my head because it's something that I need to share. There's a couple of things. So absolutely, the strongest, there's clairs, the clairaudient, the voyant, the sentient, right? Clairaudient is hearing, clairsentient is the feeling. The clairsentient everyone has. But most people will say, that's a coincidence. Or, oh, I should have listened to what I was feeling. You'll hear that a lot. And that's that feeling within them, but they'll push it aside. Everyone has it. We all have it. But what ends up happening for all of us, again, going back to the childhood, all the experiences that we have around us will stifle or push down our special, quote unquote, abilities to be able to see, know, and feel. But we'll just push it down and then think that, because let's be real here. People will say, I have to believe it when I see it. No, that's not true. You have to feel it to know it. and they'll get into those patterns of, I have to hear it or I have to see it. That's why many people in relationships will know inside that something isn't going on, something doesn't feel right, but they're waiting to see it with their eyes or hear it with their ears, and they're staying much longer than they should, right? And so the story I want to reflect on, it's such a beautiful story and it's so cute. My oldest daughter is 29, and I would say about 10 years ago, we were having conversations about where we were living and the cat we had. And out of the blue, she says, oh yeah, Mom, I used to talk to, our cat's name was Puff. I used to talk to Puff. And I'm like, what? And she said, yeah, when I would come home from school, I'd open the door and he would sit at the bottom of the stairs, knowing, because repetitive patterns, animals will see it, knowing what time of day the children were coming home. He'd sit at the bottom of the stairs, and when you open the door, that he's sitting right there on the bottom step. And she said every time she opened the door, she would hear, hi there, from the cat. So she would talk to him. And she said over time, she thought it was normal, so she never really shared it. She would just communicate. So one time she shared it at school, and someone said, that's weird. You're weird. We don't want to appear weird or different than anyone else, especially when we're a child. So she backed it up, pushed it away, didn't communicate, thought she was, thinking things in her own mind, and shut it all down. So that's really how we do have these things that we think it's normal. We share it until someone else tells us it's weird or abnormal. And then we have a tendency to shut it down. And that's a lot with children as well. You'll hear children sharing with their family, I'm seeing something or I'm hearing something. And then the parents will go, no, that's not happening. And then they push it away, and the child, will do certain things to get it out of their life and shut those special gifts down.
I'm getting goosebumps. When you first started to describe how you got your first experience of this, my hair stood up on my arms, and I had tingling feelings coming down my neck. I don't know if that's normal, but it was just because I see myself as quite an intuitive guided person as a soul. Not that I'm leaning towards mediumship, but I have really been gifted. I feel that I can connect with people at such an intuitive level that I am able to cultivate psychological safety and trust with them. And very early on in my in my line of work, even the group that I'm with now, in the first 2 days, I have my presentations lined up for what I want to facilitate on. but they never, Terry, I never use them
Yeah.
because in the moment, energetically, what I'm feeling called to do is based on the energy in the room, the personas in the room, and what I feel and being called for as a vessel to serve them with in that moment.
Yes.
So I also used to kind of shoot it down and not want to feel and receive that because when we're younger, we are told we're too much of something, or
Hmm.
we're too little of something, or we're a bit overboard, or however it was framed to us. So we do minimize those gifts. So I want to ask you, how do you encourage others to pursue their intuitive gifts, whether it's mediumship they want to go into or not? But
Hmm.
how do you encourage them to truly listen
Yes.
and receive and move forward with it?
Yes.
Because that becomes their greater purpose and potential legacy, as
Yes.
you've described,
Yes.
of helping people and saving people.
Yes. Your own story actually answered the question. So when you said that you shut it down when you were younger, but you started the story with saying, when you're working with people, you intuitively feel it and know it. You intuitively move into what you're feeling. Everyone has that. But the difference between you and others is they have doubt or guilt and all of that comes in, that I'm not good enough. And so when we're working on ourselves to overcome what we owned as a child, all of those things will start supersizing, meaning the intuition in which you are living, and you and the three of us are living, right? Trusting 100%. When you're trusting 100%, you're master manifesting. You're creating what it is that you're saying that your heart is desiring, right? Because we believe it without a doubt. But any doubt that creeps in because of our childhood, what's blueprinted in the subconscious space, will keep us from being able to trust beyond the doubt. So that's where somebody such as an intuitive healer or others that come into the subconscious to shift what it is that's cemented in there so that you can live without a doubt. You can trust it more. So, there's so much content out there. And there's so many things that people can learn from and say it's just not working because it's not hitting into the core of what it is that's keeping you from ... right? And so where working with someone who can go to your subconscious without spending 5 years of talk therapy, I can get to the core. I used to have therapists call me because it was taking them so long to get to their client's situation. So that we do a 3-way. I'd say, doon, 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 this is what's going on. And everyone's like, what? Oh my God, we got the answer. And then they catapulted to the next. And I'm so open to talk therapy, but it doesn't have to last 5, 10, 20 years, right? It doesn't, because then you're just rotating the story over and over and over and over. And who wants to do that? You're not getting anywhere. You need to move forward. And so if there's anything, we get down to the core quickly, effervescently, and then shift it so that where there's going to be something else that can come up. I look at this as all of us are like a tumbleweed. So, you have all those sticks that are intertwined. One breaks and your tumbleweed could fall apart. One stick or 2 sticks and you still have half a tumbleweed, right? And so here we are like floating through the world as a tumbleweed. And then we hit a gate or we hit a wall or we hit something and we can't get past it. But in order to break free from being that tumbleweed, something has to break, meaning something has to shift you. Something has to come alive, even though it hurts so badly. Something has to come up in order for that tumbleweed to fall apart.
Wow. I know that, like we've just discussed about how everyone has this intuition within them and that ability, but there seems to be some individuals who might be a little bit more destined to make this their life's work. And it shows up in different forms. Like I have a friend who's a medium now, and she's been a medium for over 20 years. But it took her a lot, and in fact, she's a shaman now, and it took her a long time to get to that point. And her story was that she did feel that, that she could see and speak to people who were, who had gone through to the next phase as a child. And because it's not allowed, you're not meant to be that way, or it's you seen to be weird if this is how you're communicating or who you're communicating with. It's kind of gets shut down. And she went through her life and studied and went into IT and everything that was really scientifically based. But these lessons kept on coming to her, and experiences that would stop her, like she'd have an accident which stopped her from going into work, this thing, but never ever made the connection that maybe this was trying to redirect me into the field that I'm meant to be at. And, it's a funny story, Anissa, but they say that, the universe will show you, and the universe will direct you into the path that you are meant to in different ways, and sometimes through natural causes. And she brought up the experience of having been struck by lightning not once, but twice.
Whoa.
The second time was when she realized that this is the path that I'm meant to follow in my life. And like I said, she's been doing this now. I guess it's probably around 30 years that she's into it now. But is that the case where, there are some people who are more destined to follow this direction in life, to offer the help to others?
Yes. Not everybody can be the healer and do what I do out there, because then we'd all be like, okay, we're all, So it's interesting you're bringing up that exact question. Just a few days ago, I was working on a client, and I've been with her for a couple of years, but now she sees me once every 3 or 4 months or something like that. But she owned a company, she owned a company, and it was shifting, and she didn't know where to go or what to do. And intuitively, I was clearing all of her mom's stuff and dad's stuff, that she now is an amazing breath work therapist. Amazing. And so when she was able to shift out all of the layers of things that says that you're not good enough, you have shame and guilt and resentment and all of that, that it opens up doors to do certain things. Your question, I just got a flash. I love it. Because I saw someone holding a door open, meaning someone can be in service just to be the one holding the door open, to allow people to come and go, meaning grocery stores, whatever. And that's a type of service, to be in service. You could be the one who's talking your friends off the ledge. They call you because you make sense and you help them and you create a safe space, and then they can shift it based on the things that you're saying. You could be that person. So we're all in some form of service with each other. It's just that, I just got another flash. It's just that how we see it. So here's an example. Years and years ago, prior to me writing my book, I took a workshop in how to become an author. The guy was standing on the stage and he says, okay, raise your hands, everyone who's an author. Well, we're all like, what do you mean? We're here to do that. And then he goes, no, wait, listen. He said, who's written a blog? Hands up. Who's written an article? Hands up. He was asking all these multiple questions until everyone's hands were up. And he says, congratulations, you are all an author. It's how we're interpreting what it is that we think we are or going to be doing, when in fact we are all in service with each other. It's just a different form of being in service, or a different form of healing someone, where I was saying, you're talking your friends off the ledge. So you're the one who helps people through whatever they're going through phone calls or through connections. And that's how you can do it. You don't have to turn into me or you or anybody else. You can, move into what your soul is calling for. It's very interesting. I loved how you started that. I went back briefly to go through all the jobs I've ever had. And I'm like, man, has any of them really helped me to where I am today? Absolutely. Every single job that I had taught me something that enabled me to be exactly where I am, as successful as I am. And even in sales, I had a sales job because I'm now helping people get out of their way, meaning helping them see things differently so that they can say, I'm resonating with you and I want to do this. But it starts with their feeling. Now they've come to me, but then they may say, oh, but wait, I have several people, I'm not sure if I believe this. So I'm like, okay, well, it started with you feeling. So the truth always makes sense, and the feeling in you made sense. So let's talk about what it is that you feel that you don't believe, and what the fear is that are keeping you from being able to step in and try something different, because obviously other things weren't. You see?
Mm-hmm. Just one more thing. So, we spoke a little bit about limiting beliefs. And sometimes those limiting beliefs don't originate from us.
Right.
It's we've adopted it from generations and generations before us.
Yes.
Speak to us a little bit about how we can break those generational patterns, especially the negative ones. And also, like, I found that when you're doing work, and I've gone to like a lot of family constellations and things like that, and yes, you get through these breakthroughs, but it's never entirely fixing a problem. You may go a couple of months or years down the line and then you revisit it.
Mm-hmm.
Give us your interpretation of that, and maybe perhaps why you might not have fixed the problem, or whether this is something that you will continue to go through in your evolving phase and your quest for wanting to know more about who you are.
So I mentioned earlier, sometimes people don't know where to start. It is within an experience that goes, whoa, wait, that can be the beginning and the start of, quote unquote, fixing the problem. Here is the perfect example. So from my childhood, way back to my great-grandparents, they always felt that if there's anything you wanted or needed, now back then, great-grandparents, there were no credit cards, but you have to save, and then you buy it. Now my grandparents, my paternal grandparents, my dad's mom and dad, I was very close to them. And they put upon us, they had a nice house and cars when they needed it, but they were blue-collar workers, and you have to work hard. You have to put money in the bank. If there's something that you want, you have to pay cash for it. Now that's from my great-great-grandparents, then my grandparents, and now my parents. My parents, my dad, long haul truck driver, got to work. My mom's like, work. I need a new wash machine. I have enough money in the bank. I have to buy it, right? So now my sister and I were living like that. And what was happening is that we'd save for, let's say we want to buy a new washer and dryer. And we'd get to where we were almost there, and then the car would break down. Or something else would happen. Or we'd have to move that money over to somewhere else. And then now we're buying used. And then in my late 20s, I said to myself, I don't want to live like this anymore. I don't want to be like this anymore. So I started to think, okay, I'm not living outside of my means. So I'm telling everyone, you don't have to live outside of your means. And I said to myself, I'm not going to keep buying used because I am not used. And I'm going to buy a new car. So there's a caveat to this. So listen up because it's really important. So I said, I'm going to step out and I'm going to buy a new car, but I'm going to do it good. I'm going to buy a BMW convertible. Again, I wasn't living outside of my means, but I'm like, I'm going to do it because this is what I want. So I bought it and I went to my grandparents' house and I came in, but I didn't want to tell them. I wanted to surprise them. So I parked it on the side. And I came in, I'm like, whoa, having a great day. And then my granddad says, okay, Terrie, see you later. And I said, oh, Grandpa, can you walk me to my car? Sure, babes. So we're walking down the street and we're holding hands. And he goes, where's your car, honey? Where's your car? And I said, oh, it's right there. And he goes, I don't see it. He's looking for my old car. And I looked at him and I said, Grandpa, there's this big tree and it overhung on the street. And I was parked under it. I said, it's under the tree. And he looked at it and he looked at me and he said, who do you think you are? I'm like, what? The love of my life just said that? He said, yeah, who do you think you are? You think you're better than us? My soul shattered in that moment. As I walked away crying, even I'm struggling here to finish it. I walked away crying and I said to myself, I'm not going to let anyone hold me down. No one, no matter what your label is. I'm not doing anything other than being happy for myself, and I'm not going to let anyone hold me down. And I catapulted from that. I catapulted because what I did was I'm not used, and I'm not going to live in the state of being used, right? So I'm not going to buy used anymore, but I'm not going to live out of my means. I'm going to live where I want to be. I'm going to be who I want to be and live who I want to be, right? So I got that car and then it catapulted me to buying a house and catapulted me to other things that I didn't see my brother and sister doing. But I didn't allow that. I didn't hold it against them. They were watching as if they were on another street, watching everything happening to me. And the most interesting thing happened, but sometimes it can take a long time for others. My brother just recently called me about a month ago, and I hadn't talked to him in 10 years. And when I answered the phone, he was screaming, you're right, you're right, you're right. But at first I could not understand what he was screaming because he was just like, whoa. And as I just listened and he calmed down and he said, you have been right for a long time. And I wish I would have done where you are now. I understand now. And you've been right all along, meaning how I live, trusting the universe, living in the space of intuition and living intuitively and taking action on it and trusting and knowing it beyond a doubt. But he just had to get through all of the stuff that our parents put upon us, and it had to be to where it had to be just right for him. I wasn't dragging anybody with him. I was taking care of me and living perfectly in alignment with what my soul was saying. It just took him a little bit longer.
Oh my gosh. I'm like, this is amazing. And you can see Ayubulela says the used items new cost scenario is too profound. It is, because that is being the manifestation master of your own life. When you are feeling abundant, you will find abundance walking its way towards you. We had many conversations here around when we in scarcity and lack and we don't feel like we're deserving of, that's going to follow us until we change the narrative and change that paradigm completely to a blueprint that is life by your design. And so this is the work that we're doing, right? Whether we're in service to bring people back home to that version of themselves. So I am in awe that you are sharing a recipe, for others to be able to say, okay, so what are those ingredients that I need to put in order to get this perfect cake? And so that it's not a disaster in the end, because all I ever saw was I'm not good at baking cakes. So it's not going to come out perfectly anyway. So why try? And yet, when you start to see this perfect cake, you're going to be able to bake it. It's going to happen. But we put these limitations, as per Jamila's point, because the blueprint has been imprinted upon us. But we don't need to keep the blueprint that way. And so, what I love about your work and your energy, and I can listen to you forever, your stories, it's just so amazing listening to you here. I feel like we can bring more examples to the audience, because just that simple example of the used car, I'm not used, I'm actually precious,
Yes.
new.
Yes. And I share personal stories because if one person understands this and can shift what it is they're asking for just simply through my life history, I am all for it. I'm going to share till the cows come home. And I want people to understand that, yeah, my grandfather, who I adored him. He was like my dad, because my dad wasn't around that much. He was always driving a truck. And so again, in that moment of my heart just shattering, I'm like, I can't let this take me down. This is a matter of me thriving, not just surviving. I have to get past this. And if I have to let go of something that was so precious to me in order to catapult where I want to be, I'm sorry, I have to go. And yes, but there's so many that are so conditioned that family is number one and you can't leave them behind. I have several clients like that they want to do so much more, and they're on the verge of breaking free, but they won't let go of what that older mom keeps telling them. Don't leave me. No, who do you think you, like my granddad, who do you think you are? No. The number one thing is, I know who I am.
So, in our last 3 minutes remaining, Jamila, I don't know if you have any more questions, but I really do want to know, is there any other story, short story, that you can close off our discussion with? That's if Jamila doesn't have another question, because it's in these stories that I even use within my groups. Because when you show them the path to liberation, freedom, manifestation, when you're the walking embodiment of that, you give others permission to become that.
Yes.
So I'd love to hear a final story from you. And then, Jamila, what is your question?
I think just more of a comment, Anissa. I think that I love that we've created this platform, because we go through life and we all come here with these abundant blessings, and we become so conditioned in life. And the few of us who remember those abundant blessings that we were initially given, on coming into this existence, the few of us are seen as outliers. Different from the rest and not always accepted. And this platform allows us to get the connections between all these outliers. And it's been so amazing, because we've started it off in our little small community and it's grown global now. But I think with getting all of these outliers connected, maybe this is our pathway to making sure that we remove or get rid of that conditioning, so that we can return to that space of awareness, of the blessings that we were given. So I'm just so grateful for this platform and for getting to meet so many incredible people. And yeah, please do share one more story with us before we
One
have.
more golden nugget in our last minute remaining.
Yes. Okay. So this one is amazing, like all the other ones. So I had this young man come to me. I ended up starting with the daughter, and then the mother came, and the father came, and then the sons, two sons, they both came. And all of a sudden I got, 100 people, because this woman is a motivational speaker, and she made it part of her curriculum for everyone to come to me, because she builds wealth and she needed to get them out of their own way. And so I go right to the core to shift it out. And so the son came to me, the youngest one, and he said, and I love this story, and I'm going to try not to cry through it because it's so powerful. He came to me and he started playing football when he was 8 years old. So he went all the way through, elementary, middle, high school, and then now he's in college, and he's playing football for the Rose Bowl and very college connected semi-pro football. He was a breath away from the NFL. He was playing in this game, and all of a sudden, everyone jumps on him and tackled him and broke his elbow. Well, it broke it so profoundly that he had to have multiple surgeries, long time in physical therapy. So when he came to me, he said, "Miss Terrie, I'm handicapped. Delete, delete, delete. I am is an owning of. So you got to be very present on what you're saying. So if you're saying I am broke, delete, delete, then something's going to happen to you. So you better be careful on what you're saying." So when he said that, I said, oh, no, no, no. So then he shows me his arm, and he moved it to like that. He could not bring his arm to his chest or further. So when he showed me that, I said, okay, let's delete all of that. So I laid him on the table, and I put my hands around, I cupped his elbow, and I brought energy through it, and I cupped it, and I felt this little shimmy. It was like a 3. And I said, okay, honey. I said, move your arm, put it to your chest. He brought it all the way to his chest. I started crying. He started crying. And he goes, oh my God. What ended up happening is, in the moment when he had that accident with all those other big guys jumping on him, the brain will automatically go to something. And he probably said to himself, I'm a goner. This is the end. Because the major pain he felt, he said, oh my God, this is the end. So he owned that emotional connection to the moment that the elbow broke. So with the surgeries and everything, and the doctors and the physical therapists saying, you're not going to get anything better than this, he allowed himself to own that, because they're the doctors, quote unquote. So once I shifted the emotional connection to the physical part, he was able to move his arm, and he's all better now. So it's about that emotional connection. What is it that you're thinking? What is it that you're saying? Are you very positive? Are you uplifting? Are you living in full gratitude to be able to self-lift yourself? Or are you thinking, this is never happening for me? Oh my God, my parents did this. I'm still circling around like a buzzard. It's not going to happen. You have to shift. By being able to shift to, number one, just meditate, clear your mind. Calm down the chaos in your mind and clear it, to meditate, connect, and that will give you the space to say, okay, I can live from here. I can see it differently. I can start with gratitude. I can start with truth. Speaking the truth is the magnet to bring the truth toward you. That was an amazing story, though. I love that one.
I do too. And I love that it ends with the very caption of what we've named our podcast: shifting from grudge to grit, grace, and gratitude. And I do want to give you gratitude for showing up here today and really lifting everyone's spirits and giving everyone hope and healing, and giving everyone that opportunity to know that there is more to life than the previous blueprint. You can rewrite it. On that note, I want to say thanks to those that have contributed. We may not have read out your comments today because I was so intrigued myself. So thank you, Ashif, Ayubulela, Andre, Ashif again says abundance is something we tune into. Change your mind and body, heart, and soul will naturally flow. From my side, I'm going to end the live and I'm going to hand over to you to say goodbye. And then we'll end on both sides. But Terrie, you can stay on. We normally do a short debrief. And today will be very short because I got to get back to my client as well.
Thank you, everyone, for spending this hour with us, and particularly to you, Terrie. It has been absolutely unbelievable. It really has. And your energy, I mean, Anissa, I'm sure you could feel it, you know. It sent goosebumps down our arms, our body, and it was an absolute delight to chat with you. And we hope that you will come back soon onto our podcast.
I would love to. I'm very honored and I'm very grateful for this opportunity and for the comments. Thank you so much for being present for us. I'm fully grateful.
Thank you, guys. We'll see you same time, same
We'll
place.
see you same time next week.
Ta-ta.
I'm going to end. Please stay, Terrie.